All right. So first things first, who are you? What's your role and where do you work?
Yeah, I'm Andy. I'm the CTO at Fairwinds. Last name's Suderman. What I do is a little bit of everything. So I started out at Fairwinds about 7 years ago as an SRE running Kubernetes for our customers, and I've held basically every technical role at the company since then. So now I'm responsible for the team that develops our software as well as maintains our customers' Kubernetes environments.
And what are three Kubernetes emerging tools that you are keeping an eye on?
Specifically, there's a few features of Kubernetes that I think are super interesting to keep an eye on. One of them in particular, mutating admission policy. So validating admission policy has finally made it to, if it's not stable already, it's coming very soon. So in-tree policy validation. Adding to that, the ability to do mutations, I think will be super powerful for folks. And it's really great to see policy as a blessed in-tree mechanism. So I'm excited to see more and more of that. The second one that I think everyone's talking about in some form or another is dynamic resource allocation, right? Everybody's been begging for this forever. We're all super excited about it. It'll be really interesting to see how different folks use it and how what the implications are for scheduling in the clusters. So those are two, not tools specifically, but in-tree mechanisms that I'm excited about. And then the last thing I think a lot about are AI tools. Obviously, taking the world by storm, we're all talking about AI things, specifically some of the Kubernetes native things, the K-Gateway project and the K-Agent project that were really recently open sourced by Solo. Very exciting to see where those are headed. And then I know Ray's doing a lot of interesting things in that space as well. So those are kind of the ones that I have my eye on at the moment.
One of our podcast guests, Tanat, acknowledged that having LTS is a good option because different companies have different needs and priorities. How do you determine your upgrade cadence for Kubernetes clusters?
That's a good question. So first, I think addressing the whole LTS thing is sort of a big thing to talk about. I think, a lot of folks really want LTS. We're tired of the upgrade cycle and the speed at which upgrades need to be done, especially, depending on how you're running your clusters. But there's a huge downside to that. And if you've set in on any of the discussions around LTS and the possibilities there, I think you'll hear some of these downsides. But really the biggest one that I see, and it ties directly into your question, is that if we have an LTS release and we don't have to upgrade very often, we're just going to keep kicking the can down the road, right? We already kick the upgrade can down the road too far as it is in most cases. And if we have LTS and we're not forced to upgrade, then we're just not going to do it. And so what we do as a company managing, clusters for our customers is the plan to upgrade is baked into everything that we do, right? We anticipate we're going to upgrade 3 times a year because that's how often Kubernetes releases an update. We don't do the latest version. We stay 1 or 2 versions behind the latest because we like to let things simmer. We like to stick with what's stable. We don't necessarily need all of the newest features, but we just build that into our expectation. We have to upgrade 3 times a year. And if we build everything around our Kubernetes environments in such a way that that's possible, then it doesn't become painful. It just becomes the way we do things. So I think that's super important. And I'm not really pro LTS, if I'm honest.
Staying on the topic of upgrades and dealing with older versions, AWS charges a premium to keep older versions of EKS around. One of our guests, Matthew Duggan, argues that backporting fixes isn't free and someone has to implement, test, and apply it. But he argues that these charges aren't completely fair. Should cloud providers charge a premium to keep older versions of Kubernetes running?
Absolutely. I mean, if the first half of the argument is totally valid. There's a ton of work involved in backporting. There's a reason that Kubernetes versions stop supporting security patches after that, year and a half-ish time period, because it is far too expensive to try to backport those changes across a ton of different versions. If a cloud provider wants to offer that service, I think that's great. It makes, it's an added benefit for their customers. I would argue that maybe in some cases they're not charging enough. I think the premium is what forces folks to move and upgrade. Kind of going back to my previous statement, we just have to get used to upgrading. It's the Kubernetes environment, the Kubernetes team does such a good job of making releases compatible so that we can go through the upgrade process. Let's just normalize upgrading. It's okay. Let's keep doing it. And if you really need to stay behind, maybe you have to pay a little extra. And you can factor that into your own ROI decisions about how you want to run your operations.
Dan Garfield shared that your cluster only feels real once you set up ingress and DNS. Before that, it was just a playground where it didn't matter when stuff broke. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's super interesting. There's a lot to dig into in that statement. I think for a good majority of folks, that's absolutely true, right? Your environment is not real until you're serving traffic for your customers. Now, ingress may not be the only way which you provide access to what you're doing to your customers, and your customers might be internal, and you might be running things like jobs or machine learning workflows or whatever that work internally for your customers. So ingress might not be the mechanism, but I think what we're trying to say here, and what I think of when I hear this, is that a Kubernetes cluster out of the box is not 100% functional. What you need is a whole slew of other tools, add-ons, ingress controllers, DNS controllers, cert managers, other operators that you might be using to do things. Those are all super important to the functionality of your Kubernetes cluster. And as soon as those are in place and you're using them to serve, production traffic, then yeah, absolutely. It's no longer a playground. But to me, the thing to focus on is just that ecosystem of add-ons. It's really crucial to all of our platforms and our environments as we run them.
Now, Kubernetes turned 10 years old last year. What do you expect to happen in the next few years when it comes to Kubernetes?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot. And I really think, what we're going to see, and we've already started to see it. I've seen quite a few different implementations of this. What we're going to see is more abstraction layers built on top of Kubernetes. Kubernetes itself is an abstraction layer of sorts on top of the Linux servers that we've run for so long, right? And it is a great way to orchestrate containers, but it's not easy. It's not straightforward. It's not secure by default. It's a complex beast of a product to run. And so we're going to continue to see more abstraction layers that make it easy. We're going to see paid ones. We're going to see open source ones. We've seen them with some of sort of the application bundling projects out there. We've seen it with, I've seen lots of different proposals for kind of larger systems that sit on top of Kubernetes and use it for the orchestration piece and then abstract away all the complexity for you. And there's commercial products out there like MoGenius and and I think Northflank as well, which are providing even further abstraction to where it's like, just give me a container and I'll run it. And so we'll see more and more of that. The question to ask is which one's going to win, or will one win, or will we have a whole bunch of different ones? I think that'll be super fascinating to see how that all shakes out.
And Andy, what's next for you?
That is a great question. Most of the time I'm thinking about what's happening right in front of me and what I'm working on. Keeping Fairwinds running well and serving our clients as best we can. And for the foreseeable future, that'll be what I'm doing. I think what will happen is, I have been slow to do it, but something in the AI space will shake loose that I find actually interesting. And I will probably end up doing something in there, but I can't say what yet.
What is it about the things that you've seen up until now with AI that you haven't found interesting or practical enough?
I think, the hype has been really, really high. Right. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, right? But the amount of hype is really large, which means that every single company out there jumped to say, we're doing something in AI. And what that inevitably shook out as for a little while was we're using AI for anything and everything. And some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't. And there's a ton of noise. We did the same thing with Kubernetes back in the day. When it first came out, people started to, operators started to see it. They were like, oh, we have to run everything on Kubernetes. And some people did, and some people did not succeed at that. And I think we've come to a point now where it's a little more mature. We've realized these are the places where Kubernetes makes a lot of sense, and we use them for those things. And AI just hasn't hit that yet. What will happen is, what's different about the AI trend is that it's happening a lot faster, and it's expanding well beyond software development and well outside of infrastructure. Kubernetes is a very infrastructure-focused tool, and AI has applications probably well outside of that. And so it's just causing it to move a lot faster. So really just cutting through the noise if I have to simplify my answer there.
And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
I'm available on the CNCF Slack, the Kubernetes Slack. I'm always on LinkedIn as well. And then every now and then on Blue Sky. I'm not a huge social media user, but the 2 Slacks are probably the biggest place to reach me.
Fantastic. Andy, great talking to you. We'll speak soon. Take care.
So, thanks.